When I opened the credit card statement and saw a $2,200 charge to a bridal boutique in Denver, I realized my husband wasn't just having an affair. He was building an entire second life with money I'd earned. My name is Karen Lindstrom, and at 48 years old, I thought I had everything figured out. I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep based in Phoenix, Arizona. The kind of job that pays well, but requires constant travel and client dinners and networking events that blur into each other after 23 years. My territory covers the Southwest, which means I'm on the road 3 weeks out of every month, staying in identical Marriotts and Holiday Inns, eating room service, and video chatting with my husband Greg from hotel rooms that all smell like industrial cleaning products and stale air conditioning. Greg and I had been married for 19 years. We met at Arizona State when I was getting my business degree, and he was studying hospitality management. He was charming and funny and had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room, even when we were at a crowded party. We got married a year after graduation, bought a house in Scottsdale, and built what I thought was a solid life together. We never had kids. It just never happened. And after a few years of half-hearted trying, we decided we were okay with it being just the two of us. Greg managed a mid-sized hotel downtown, and I climbed the corporate ladder at my pharmaceutical company. We had separate careers, separate bank accounts for our personal spending, and one joint account for household expenses. It worked for us, or at least I thought it did. The truth is, I was barely home. 3 weeks on the road, 1 week home, repeat. It was exhausting but lucrative. I made good money, really good money, and I justified the constant travel by telling myself I was building our future. Early retirement, travel for pleasure instead of work, the dream of someday slowing down and actually enjoying the life we'd built. Greg seemed supportive. He'd text me throughout the day when I was traveling. Sweet messages, funny memes, photos of our dog, a golden retriever named Copper. He'd FaceTime me before bed, tell me about his day, ask about mine. When I came home for my week off, he'd plan date nights, make my favorite dinners, act like he'd missed me terribly. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? We were solid. We were partners. We were building a life together. The first crack appeared in March, 3 months before I found that credit card statement. I'd come home a day early from a trip to Albuquerque because a client meeting had been canceled. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was exhausted but excited to surprise Greg with an early return. When I pulled into our driveway, his car was there, which was odd because he was usually at the hotel until 6. I walked in through the garage, calling his name, and heard the sound of his voice coming from upstairs. He was on the phone, his tone low and intimate in a way that made something in my chest tighten. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, listening. I know, baby, I know. Just a few more months and we won't have to hide anymore. I promise. Baby. He'd called someone baby. He hadn't called me that in years. I'll figure it out. The money will be there. I just need to move some things around without Karen noticing. My legs felt weak. I sat down on the bottom step, still holding my suitcase, still wearing my travel clothes that smelled like airplane and rental car. I love you too. I'll call you tonight after she goes to bed. Footsteps above me. I stood up quickly, making noise, rattling my keys. Greg, I'm home. He appeared at the top of the stairs, his face going through a series of expressions: surprise, guilt, then forced happiness, in the span of about 2 seconds. Karen, I didn't expect you until tomorrow. Meeting got canceled. Who were you talking to? Oh, just Steve from work. We've got this situation with a conference booking. The lie came so easily it made me nauseous. How was Albuquerque? Fine, tiring. I'm going to take a shower. I walked past him up the stairs, not trusting myself to look at him, not trusting my voice to stay steady. In our bathroom, I turned on the shower and sat on the closed toilet shaking. He was having an affair. That much was obvious. The question was what to do about it. I could confront him immediately, demand the truth. But what if I was wrong? What if it really had been Steve from work and I was being paranoid? Except I wasn't wrong. I knew what I'd heard. The intimacy in his voice, the promise of not hiding anymore, the mention of moving money around without me noticing. That last part bothered me more than the affair itself. What money? We had separate accounts. He couldn't access mine unless he'd been using our joint account, the one we both contributed to for household expenses. I got in the shower and let the hot water run over me while I thought. I needed to be smart about this. I needed information before I acted. Over the next few weeks, I became a spy in my own marriage. I checked our joint bank account obsessively, looking for unusual charges. At first, I didn't see anything obvious. Groceries, utilities, the mortgage, his car payment, all normal. But then I started noticing patterns. Charges to restaurants I'd never been to, a payment to a florist, $700 to a jewelry store, and most telling. Regular Venmo transfers to someone named A. Morrison for amounts ranging from $500 to $2,000. Who the hell was A. Morrison? I couldn't ask Greg without revealing that I was watching his spending, so I did what any desperate wife would do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Derek Yang, and he came highly recommended from a divorce attorney my friend had used. I met him at a coffee shop near my office, feeling ridiculous and paranoid, and absolutely certain that I was about to confirm my worst fears. I need to know if my husband is having an affair, I told him, and if he is, I need to know with who and for how long. Derek didn't judge, didn't ask if I was sure, just pulled out a contract and explained his rates. 2 weeks of surveillance, including photos, video, and a full report. $5,000. I paid with my personal credit card, the one Greg had no access to, and tried to go about my life like normal. Traveled to Salt Lake City for a medical conference. Came home and acted like everything was fine. Kissed my husband goodnight and laid next to him in bed, wondering who else he was kissing, who else he was lying to. 2 weeks later, Derek called me. Mrs. Lindstrom, I have my report. Would you like to meet in person or should I email it? In person, tomorrow. Same coffee shop. I barely slept that night. Kept imagining what the report would say. Some young woman from his hotel, probably. A front desk clerk or a bartender. Someone younger, prettier, less busy, less absent. The next morning I met Derek at the coffee shop. He handed me a manila folder that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I'm sorry, he said quietly. It's all in there. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The first photo showed Greg leaving our house at 9 in the morning, dressed casually in jeans and a polo shirt. The timestamp said it was a Tuesday, a day I'd been in Las Vegas meeting with hospital administrators. The second photo showed him arriving at a townhouse in Tempe, about 30 minutes from our house. The third showed him using a key to let himself in. Not knocking, not waiting to be let in. He had a key. The fourth photo made my stomach drop. Greg on the patio of that townhouse with a woman. She was younger than me, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, pretty in a girl next doorway, and she was visibly, obviously pregnant. I stared at the photo, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. That's Amanda Morrison, Derek said gently. Age 34, elementary school teacher. She's lived in that townhouse for about 2 years. According to public records, the property is owned by a trust, but I was able to trace it back to your husband. He bought it 18 months ago. He bought her a house? It appears so, and based on the frequency of his visits and the amount of time he spends there, I'd estimate this relationship has been ongoing for at least 2 years, possibly longer. 2 years. While I'd been traveling, working, building our future, he'd been building a completely different future with someone else. The pregnancy, I managed to ask. Based on her appearance, I'd estimate she's about 6 months along. 6 months. Greg was going to be a father. We'd never had kids, never would have kids, and he was having a baby with his mistress in a house he'd bought with money that should have been ours. There's more, Derek said quietly. He pulled out bank statements, credit card records, property documents. Your husband has been systematically draining your joint account to support Amanda Morrison. The townhouse payment, her car payment, her insurance, her medical bills, it's all coming from the account you both contribute to. I looked at the numbers. Over the past 18 months, $168,000 had been transferred out of our joint account. Money I'd earned. Money I'd contributed thinking it was going toward our life, our home, our future. He'd stolen from me. That's what this was. Not just an affair, but theft. What do you want to do? Derek asked. What did I want to do? I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn his clothes. I wanted to drive to that townhouse in Tempe and tell that pregnant woman exactly what kind of man she was having a baby with. But I didn't do any of those things because I was good at strategy. I was good at planning. And if Greg thought he could steal from me and build a second life without consequences, he was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. I need more information, I told Derek. I need to know everything. Her full name, her background, how they met, what he's promised her. I need financial records showing exactly where every penny went. I need enough evidence that when I divorce him, he doesn't get a single thing. Derek nodded. I can do that. Give me another week. I spent that week pretending everything was normal, smiling at Greg over dinner, responding to his sweet text messages while I was on the road, acting like my whole world hadn't just collapsed. But at night, alone in hotel rooms, I planned. I called divorce attorneys and got consultations. I called my company's HR department and asked about financial fraud committed by a spouse. I called my bank and asked about protecting my personal accounts from unauthorized access. And I waited for Derek's final report. When it came, it was worse than I'd imagined. Amanda Morrison had been a guest at Greg's hotel 3 years ago in town town for a teaching conference. They'd started talking at the hotel bar. He'd given her his number. The affair had begun almost immediately. He'd told her he was separated from me, that we were getting divorced, but it was complicated because of shared assets, that he just needed time to sort everything out, and then they could be together officially. He'd promised her marriage, he'd promised her a family, he'd promised her a life, and he'd paid for all of it with my money. The townhouse was in a trust that would transfer to her upon Greg's death, ensuring she'd have security. He'd put her car in his name but paid for it from our joint account. He'd been paying her health insurance, her utilities, her groceries. He'd even paid for the fertility treatments that had resulted in her pregnancy after she'd struggled to conceive naturally. Every aspect of Amanda's life was being funded by me, and she had no idea I even existed as anything other than Greg's almost ex-wife. I felt sick, not just at Greg's betrayal, but at the scope of it. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a mistake. This was a carefully constructed alternate reality that he'd been living while lying to both of us. The credit card charge that had started all of this, the $2,200 to a bridal boutique in Denver, turned out to be for Amanda's sister's wedding. Amanda was a bridesmaid, and Greg had paid for her dress, paid for it with our money, with my money. I sat in my home office, surrounded by evidence of my husband's betrayal, and I felt something shift inside me. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, calculated anger. Greg thought he was smarter than me, thought he could juggle two lives, two women, two futures, thought I was too busy, too absent, too trusting to notice. He was about to learn how catastrophically wrong he was. I started with the finances. Quietly, carefully, I moved all my money out of our joint account and into my personal account. Every penny I'd contributed over the past year. I left exactly enough to cover the mortgage and utilities for 1 month and nothing else. Then I called a locksmith and had him come to the house while Greg was at work. Changed every lock. Garage, front door, back door, side gate, everything. Then I called the best divorce attorney in Phoenix, a woman named Rita Sanchez, who had a reputation for destroying cheating husbands in court. I gave her everything Derek had found. Photos, financial records, property documents, all of it. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of marital fraud I've ever seen, Rita said, flipping through the evidence. He's been using marital assets to fund an affair and support another woman. Any judge will crucify him. I want everything, I said. The house, his pension, spousal support, everything. I want him to walk away from this with nothing but his girlfriend and the baby he chose over me. I can make that happen. The next day, I filed for divorce, had Greg served with papers at his hotel in front of his colleagues and subordinates, made sure it was as public and humiliating as possible. He called me immediately, his voice panicked. Karen, what the hell? Divorce papers at my work? Surprised? You shouldn't be. I know about Amanda. I know about the townhouse. I know about the baby. I know about every penny you've stolen from me to fund your second life. Silence on the other end of the line. I want you out of my house, I continued. I've changed the locks. Your clothes are boxed up in the garage. You have until 5 p.m. today to pick them up, and then they're going to Goodwill. Karen, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you've been lying to me for 3 years. That you've been stealing from me to pay for your mistress. That you're having a baby with another woman while I've been working myself to death to support our life. There's nothing to explain, Greg. It's all very clear. I was going to tell you when? After the baby was born? After you drained our accounts completely? Or were you just planning to keep living both lives forever? I love her, Karen. I'm sorry, but I love her. Those words should have hurt more than they did. But I was beyond hurt. I was in a place of pure, crystalline fury. That's fine. You can love her all you want, but you're going to do it while broke, unemployed, and publicly exposed as a fraud. Because I'm not just divorcing you, Greg. I'm destroying you. I hung up before he could respond. Over the next week, I did exactly what I'd promised. I contacted his employer and filed a complaint about his misuse of company resources. He'd been using his hotel position to provide Amanda with free rooms and services, which violated company policy. He was fired within 48 hours. I contacted every creditor tied to our joint account and explained that the account had been compromised by fraud. Froze everything, made it so he couldn't access a dime. I sent a certified letter to Amanda Morrison explaining exactly who I was and what Greg had done. Included copies of our marriage certificate, photos of us together, and bank statements showing that her entire life was being funded with money stolen from me. And then I waited. Amanda showed up at my door 3 days later, and she looked exactly like I'd expected. Tired, pregnant, and completely devastated. I'd been waiting for this. Part of me hoped she'd come. Part of me hoped she'd have the courage to face the woman whose life had been funding hers. I opened the door, and we stood there looking at each other across the threshold. Two women who'd been played by the same man, connected by his lies and his greed and his absolute lack of regard for anyone but himself. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice small. I stepped aside and let her enter. She walked into my living room room, looking around at the house Greg had shared with me, the life he'd been living when he wasn't with her. Her hands rested protectively on her pregnant belly, and I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Anger at her participation in destroying my marriage, even if she hadn't known the full truth, and pity for what she was about to face. "I didn't know," she said immediately, turning to face me. "I swear to God, Karen, I didn't know. He told me you were separated, that you were divorcing, that it was just a matter of paperwork. For 3 years? You believed that for 3 years?" Her face crumpled. "I kept asking when the divorce would be final. He always had a reason why it was taking longer. Legal complications, asset disputes. He made it sound so reasonable. Did you ever think to verify any of it? To check if we were actually separated?" "No, I trusted him. I loved him. I thought..." She sank onto my couch, crying now. "I thought he loved me." I sat across from her, watching this woman who'd been sleeping with my husband, carrying his child, living in a house he'd bought with my money. I should have hated her. Part of me did. But part of me saw her as just another one of Greg's victims. "How much did he tell you about me?" I asked. "Not much. He said you'd grown apart, that you cared more about your career than your marriage, that you were never home, that he'd been lonely for years." I laughed bitterly. "And none of that made you wonder if maybe you were hearing a cheater's justification rather than the truth?" "I was in love. People in love are stupid." "She wasn't wrong about that. The townhouse," I said. "Did you know he bought it with stolen money? He said it was an investment property, that he was putting it in a trust for our baby's future. It's in a trust, all right, but the money came from our joint account, money I earned. Every payment on that townhouse, every bill, every expense. It was all my money, Amanda. Your car, your insurance, your fertility treatments, the groceries in your fridge. All of it was paid for by me." She looked like she was going to be sick. "I had no idea. I thought he had savings. He said he'd been careful with money." "Oh, he was careful. Careful to make sure I didn't notice him draining our accounts to fund your entire existence. I'll pay you back. I don't know how, but You can't pay me back. You're a teacher making $40,000 a year, and you're about to be a single mother, unless you think Greg's going to step up." She shook her head. "He hasn't returned my calls since you sent that letter. I've tried calling him over 50 times. He's blocked me." Of course he had, because Greg was a coward who only wanted the fun parts of having a double life. Now that everything had exploded, now that both women knew the truth, he'd disappeared rather than face the consequences. "Where is he?" I asked. "I don't know. He's not at the hotel. I went there and they said he'd been fired. He's not at the townhouse. His phone goes straight to voicemail. He's probably at his brother's place in Flagstaff. That's where he always runs when things get hard." Amanda wiped her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I am. I never wanted to be the other woman. I never wanted to hurt anyone." "But you did hurt someone. You hurt me. Even if you didn't know the full truth. You were sleeping with a man who told you he was married. You helped him lie. You benefited from his theft." "I know, and I have to live with that. But Karen, I'm 6 months pregnant with his baby. I'm about to be a single mother with no savings, a job that barely pays my bills, and a townhouse I apparently can't afford. So believe me, I'm paying for it." I looked at this woman. This girl, really, because she seemed so young, sitting on my couch with tears streaming down her face, and I made a decision. "The townhouse is in a trust that names you as beneficiary," I said. "According to my lawyer, because it's in a separate trust and not technically a marital asset, you get to keep it. The payments, though, those stop now. You'll need to figure out how to pay the mortgage yourself or sell it. I can't afford, that's not my problem. But I'm not going to make you homeless while you're pregnant. That's more mercy than you or Greg deserve. But I'm not a monster." "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it so I can sleep at night knowing I didn't destroy a baby's life because of their father's mistakes." She stood up to leave, then paused at the door. "Can I ask you something?" "What? Do you think he ever loved either of us? Or were we both just convenient?" I thought about 19 years of marriage, about the man I thought I knew, about sweet text messages and date nights, and the way he used to look at me like I mattered. "I think he loved having us both," I said finally. "I think he loved having a wife who made good money and didn't ask questions, and a girlfriend who made him feel young and exciting. I think he loved playing house with you while I was traveling and coming home to stability when he wanted it. But did he love us as people, as actual human beings with feelings and needs and worth? No, I don't think he did." Amanda nodded slowly. "What are you going to do now?" "I'm going to divorce him, take everything I'm legally entitled to, and rebuild my life without him." "What are you going to do?" "I guess I'll figure out how to be a single mom. Maybe sell the townhouse and move somewhere cheaper. Start over. Good luck with that." After she left, I sat in my living room for a long time, processing everything. I'd expected to feel triumphant after that conversation, after watching Greg's girlfriend cry and admit he'd blocked her, after confirming that he'd abandoned her the moment things got difficult. But I just felt empty, because even though I'd exposed Greg, even though I'd protected my assets and filed for divorce and done everything right, I couldn't escape the fact that I'd spent 19 years with someone who'd been capable of this this level of deception? What did that say about my judgment? What did that say about me? My phone rang. It was Rita, my divorce attorney. Karen, I've got news. Greg's attorney just filed a response to our petition. He's claiming that you abandoned the marriage due to excessive work travel and that he's entitled to half of your retirement accounts and spousal support. I actually laughed. He's asking for spousal support after stealing from me for 3 years. His attorney is arguing that the money from the joint account was his to use as he saw fit since both names were on the account, and that your income disparity means he's entitled to support. Can they actually make that argument with a straight face? They can try. But Karen, we have something they don't know about yet. I've been digging into Greg's finances and I found something interesting. He's been running credit cards in both your names without your knowledge. About $80,000 worth of debt that you're technically liable for. My stomach dropped. What? He used your social security number to open joint credit accounts. The bills were going to a P.O. box in Tempe. He's been making minimum payments to keep them off your radar, but you're legally responsible for half that debt. How is that possible? I never signed anything. He forged your signature, and he's been doing it for at least 2 years. That's identity theft, Karen. That's fraud. That's potentially criminal. I felt the anger returning, sharp and clarifying. What do? We file a police report. We get the credit card companies to provide documentation of the applications. We prove he forged your signature, and then we use it to destroy his case. Because a man who commits identity theft against his wife doesn't get spousal support. He gets jail time. Do it. File the report. Get the documentation. I want him prosecuted. Are you sure? Criminal charges could take years to resolve. I don't care. He stole from me, lied to me, and now he's trying to take even more. I'm not letting him get away with it. Over the next month, I became intimately familiar with the criminal justice system, filed police reports, provided evidence to detectives, sat through interviews where I had to explain in humiliating detail how I'd been too trusting, too absent, too stupid to notice my husband was destroying my credit while building a second life. The credit card companies were sympathetic but unhelpful. Yes, the signatures were forged. Yes, it was fraud, but I was still liable for the debt unless I could prove in court that Greg had acted without my knowledge or consent, which meant more lawyers, more fees, more time, but I did it anyway. Because this wasn't about the money anymore. It was about principle. It was about making sure Greg faced consequences for once in his life. The criminal investigation moved slowly. Detectives interviewed Greg, who claimed I'd known about the credit cards and had verbally authorized him to sign for me. They interviewed Amanda, who confirmed Greg had been paying for everything but couldn't speak to the credit card. They interviewed people from Greg's hotel, from our neighborhood, from our families, and slowly, painfully, the case built. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings continued. Greg's attorney tried every trick, claiming I'd been emotionally absent, that my travel had constituted abandonment, that Greg deserved compensation for holding down the home while I built my career. Rita demolished every argument, showed that Greg had encouraged my travel because it paid well, showed that he'd actively hidden his affair and his spending, showed that far from holding down the home, he'd been systematically looting our joint assets to fund an extramarital relationship. We had our first court date in June, 5 months after I'd filed for divorce. I sat on one side of the courtroom with Rita. Greg sat on the other side with his attorney, a slick-looking man who'd apparently specialized in defending indefensible husbands. Greg looked terrible, thinner, grayer, older. He didn't meet my eyes when I walked in. The judge was a woman in her 60s with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. She reviewed our filings, looked at the evidence, and then looked at Greg with barely disguised contempt. Mr. Lindstrom, I'm looking at evidence that you withdrew over $160,000 from a joint marital account to support an extramarital affair. Is that correct? Greg's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client maintains that he had equal right to those funds. I'm not asking you, counsel. I'm asking your client. Mr. Lindstrom, did you or did you not use marital funds to purchase a property for your mistress and support her financially? Greg stood slowly. I did, Your Honor, but I was planning to what? Planning to tell your wife? Planning to divorce her? Planning to pay her back? The judge flipped through more papers. I'm also seeing allegations of identity theft and credit card fraud. Has that investigation concluded? Not yet, Your Honor, Rita said. But we have substantial evidence that Mr. Lindstrom forged my client's signature on multiple credit applications. Your Honor, those allegations are unproven, Greg's attorney protested. They're under active criminal criminal investigation," the judge said sharply, "which tells me there's enough evidence for the police to take them seriously. Mr. Lindstrom, I'm going to make this very simple for you. You have 30 days to provide a full accounting of every penny you removed from the joint marital account. You have 30 days to prove that you have the means to pay back at least half of what you took, and you have 30 days to explain to me why I shouldn't hold you in contempt for your conduct during this marriage. Your Honor, my client has limited means. Then perhaps he shouldn't have spent over $160,000 on his girlfriend. 30 days, counsel. Get your client's affairs in order." We were dismissed. I walked out of that courtroom feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. In the hallway, Greg tried to approach me. "Karen, please, can we talk?" "No. I know you're angry, but I need you to understand." "Understand what, Greg?" "That you lied to me for 3 years. That you stole from me. That you were building a whole other life while I was working to support us." "I understand perfectly. What I don't understand is how you thought you'd get away with it." "I never meant to hurt you. You just meant to use me. That's different, right? As long as I didn't know, as long as I kept working and depositing money into our account and staying out of your way, everything was fine. But the second I found out, the second I stopped being convenient, you cut me off. You blocked Amanda too, because neither of us mattered to you. We never did." "That's not true." "Then where have you been, Greg? Where have you been while she's 6 months pregnant with your baby? Where have you been while I've been dealing with the aftermath of your fraud? Let me guess. Your brother's place in Flagstaff, hiding like a coward." His face confirmed it. "You're pathetic," I said. "And in 30 days, when you can't produce the accounting the judge ordered, when you can't explain where all that money went, you're going to be broke and potentially facing criminal charges. I hope it was worth it." I walked away and didn't look back. The 30 days came and went. Greg's attorney filed for an extension. The judge denied it. Greg failed to produce the required accounting because he'd spent the money. All of it. On Amanda, on the townhouse, on maintaining 2 lives. It was gone. The judge was not amused. "Mr. Lindstrom, I find that you have systematically looted marital assets to fund an extramarital affair. I find that you have acted in bad faith throughout these proceedings, and I find that you are wholly undeserving of any share of your wife's separate property or retirement accounts. She awarded me the house, my full retirement account, and ordered Greg to pay me $12,000, all he had left in his personal savings, as partial restitution for what he'd stolen. She also ordered him to pay my attorney's fees, which had ballooned to $47,000 over the course of the proceedings. Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm ordering that Mr. Lindstrom receive no spousal support, no share of Mrs. Lindstrom's pension, and no further access to any joint assets. The marriage is dissolved, effective immediately." It was over. 19 years of marriage ended with a gavel strike. I walked out of the courthouse with Rita, feeling dizzy. We won. We destroyed 1,000 names. Rita corrected zero with a satisfied smile. I raised my hand. That was one of the most clear-cut cases I've ever had. Judges spotted me and walked over, his smile widening. "You couldn't have asked for a better outcome." "Michelle? Wow. What about the criminal charges?" "You're even more beautiful in person." Still the same line he'd used on me. The DA's office is building probably the same line he used on everyone. Could take another 6 months to a year. "Thank you, Robert. But based on the evidence, you're very handsome yourself. I'd say Greg's looking at potential jail time or at minimum a hefty fine and probation." Every gesture was calculated, victorious. Every story was designed to elicit sympathy or admiration. Should have felt vindicated, and part of me did. But mostly I just felt tired. The divorce was final, but the damage remained. I'd lost 19 years of my life to a man who'd valued me only for what I could provide. I'd lost money, time, trust, and faith in my own judgment, but I'd also gained something. I'd gained the knowledge that I was strong enough to fight back, that I wouldn't be a victim, that I could rebuild. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I was in my home office when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Amanda standing there, baby carrier in hand, looking exhausted but somehow lighter than the last time I'd seen her. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, "but I wanted you to meet someone." She gestured to the carrier. Inside was a tiny baby girl with a shock of dark hair and Greg's nose. "Her name is Lily," Amanda said. "She's 3 weeks old. She's beautiful." "She is. And she's mine. Not ours. Mine. Greg hasn't seen her, hasn't called, hasn't sent a dime." "I'm not surprised. I sold the townhouse. I'm moving to Oregon to be near my sister. Fresh start. But before I left, I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For not destroying me when you could have. For letting me keep the townhouse long enough to sell it. For being a better person than I deserved." I looked at this young woman with her baby and her fresh start and her complete lack of Greg's support, and I felt something surprising. Compassion. "We were both victims," I said. "Different kinds of victims, but victims nonetheless. You didn't deserve what he did to you any more than I did. I'm sorry for my part in hurting you. I know, and I forgive you. Not for him, Never for him, but for you and for her. I nodded at the baby. She didn't ask for any of this. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. That means more than you know. After she left, I thought about forgiveness, about how it's not about excusing what someone did or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about refusing to let them keep hurting you. It's about choosing to move forward without the weight of bitterness. I forgave Amanda because holding on to anger toward her would only hurt me. But Greg I didn't forgive. Greg I would never forgive. Because some betrayals are too deep, too calculated, too cruel to ever warrant forgiveness. 6 months later, I received a call from the DA's office. Greg had accepted a plea deal, 3 years probation, restitution of $50,000 to be paid over time, and a felony conviction for identity theft and fraud. He'll be a convicted felon, the prosecutor explained, which means difficulty finding work, difficulty getting credit, difficulty with a lot of things for a very long time. Good, I said, and I meant it. It's been 2 years now since I found that credit card statement that changed everything. 2 years since I discovered my husband's double life. 2 years since I burned my marriage down and rebuilt myself from the ashes. I still have the same job, still travel constantly, still stay in identical hotel rooms. But now, when I video chat before bed, it's with my friends, my sister, my nieces, people who actually care about me rather than what I can provide. I've dated a little, nothing serious, mostly just coffee with men from apps who seem nice enough but don't make my heart race. My therapist says I'm still healing, that trusting again takes time. Maybe she's right. I paid off the fraudulent credit card debt. Couldn't wait for Greg's restitution payments to trickle in over years. Took a chunk out of my savings, but it was worth it to have clean credit again. I redecorated the house, erased every trace of Greg's presence, made it mine, and slowly, carefully, I built a life that belongs only to me. Last week, I got a LinkedIn message from Amanda. She's teaching 2nd grade in Portland now, has a small apartment near her sister, and Lily just turned 2. She sent a photo, a beautiful toddler with dark curls and a huge smile. Thank you again for everything, her message said. We're doing okay. Hope you are too. I am doing okay. Better than okay. I'm learning what it means to be whole without needing someone else to complete me. I'm learning that being alone is different from being lonely. I'm learning that the strongest person I know is the one looking back at me from the mirror. Greg messages me sometimes, apologies mostly, explanations I don't read, requests to talk that I ignore. He's blocked on everything that matters, but he still tries. I think he wants absolution. Wants me to tell him it's okay, that I understand, that we can somehow be friends, but I have nothing to say to him because there's no conversation to have with someone who spent years stealing from you while looking you in the eyes and saying, I love you. My friend Patricia asked me recently if I regret the marriage, if I wish I'd never met him. I thought about it for a while before answering. No, I said finally, because I learned something important. I learned that I'm strong enough to survive betrayal. I learned that I'm smart enough to fight back. I learned that I'm capable of rebuilding even when everything falls apart. Greg didn't teach me those things. I learned them in spite of him, and that's worth something. What about love? Patricia asked. Do you think you'll ever try again? Maybe, someday, when I'm ready. But next time, I'll love with my eyes open. I'll trust, but verify. I'll share my life, but not my financial security. I'll be vulnerable, but not stupid. That sounds exhausting. It sounds smart, because I was the perfect victim. Trusting, absent, financially comfortable. I made it easy for him. Next time, I won't make anything easy. Tonight, I'm sitting on my back patio with a glass of wine, watching the Arizona sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Copper is asleep at my feet. The house is quiet. My life is mine. And I realized something profound. I thought Greg had taken everything from me. My money, my trust, my faith in love, my 19 years of marriage. But he didn't take the things that actually matter. He didn't take my strength. He didn't take my intelligence. He didn't take my ability to fight back, to rebuild, to refuse to be destroyed by someone else's cruelty. Those things were always mine, and they always will be. So yes, I thought he was just cheating on me. And yes, I found out he was paying for her entire life with my money. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have predicted, was that discovering his betrayal would set me free. Free from a marriage built on lies. Free from a man who valued me only for what I could provide. Free from the version of myself who was too trusting, too absent, too willing to believe the best in someone who deserved none of my faith. I'm 50 years old now, single, financially stable, wary but not broken. I have a life that belongs entirely to me, built on foundations that can't be stolen because they exist inside me, not in a joint bank account. And if I ever love again, it will be with the wisdom of someone who survived